So the story is, the game is, the illusion is to keep you in that waiting room of thought, let alone critical thought. And the way to do that with word magic is to put pictures like this. Is why they put movies. Put the pictures of the movies. Social media now is just a more complex version of Hollywood as far as mind control and manipulation. So put the image of a dream, put the image of love, put the image of human, put the image of humanity, put the image of justice, put the image of freedom out there, and put the label of these names. The names, the words, and the imagery creates your false reality. When somebody tells you to dream, like when society tells kids, just keep dreaming, just keep dreaming. It's kind of like that be true tattoo. Or it's kind of like love, just be love. It's just like, just dream. But they don't tell you why you should dream and the depths of how to dream to get to the depths, a deeper depth of why. So the what consciousness and the why and the who consciousness is what runs the illusion consciousness, the imagery, the symbolisms, the world where all you have to do is hear a word and see an image. So you hear a word and you see the image in the newspaper. You see the image in your mind when the signals come over the radio and produce an image on your brain. And then so it went from newspapers are written down to the radio, then to the television, then to the computers, then to the internet. So it's this growing of, think of just that evolution of mind control being the way back to the cancer. Instead of, people saying the same thing with like I used to say this too, follow the money. People who used to be in like other like Occupy or whatever, you evolve through realizing what's going on. So follow the money. Well, you can follow the frequencies. So the evolution of frequencies of mind control go from like written down in the books, and then or written down on, you can even include a stone, and beyond that, like certain ideas written down and then evolved into, oh no, we're gonna fuck with this, we're gonna make people think this is some real shit. We just put this next to the real shit that was written in stone, they put some old fuck shit next to it. And then eventually people started to be like, oh, this fuck shit starts to, it takes over like a disease or a parasite. So once it went from written down, then it went from the radio, then it went from the television, then it went to, that's where the whole moon landing is still believed by the words, we landed on the moon, written in the newspaper, and then the images you saw on television. So you can see how this is like to follow the frequencies instead of follow the money. So this is a more scientific approach to the overall system that includes the system of racism, white supremacy, because as soon as you follow those frequencies, you're going to see a lot of Eurocentric frequencies all tied up in there, but people don't want to talk about that. They just want to blame it all on the Jews, and they don't want to say nothing about that, take any kind of like responsibility for that. They just want to, move on. Let's just move on. And we're all the victims here. We're all the same. Everything's fucking, no. We can't allow any of these little cancerous pieces. This is why I say, if you're shunning or moving to the side a lot of this information, then you're pushing like a piece of cancer that has been presented to you, and then you're just like, oh, we'll just we'll leave that there, and we can just love and light our way into the future. Like that cancer is not going to go away. You can't just push it to the side. So the who and the why, the who and the what consciousness keeps the illusions with the imagery. So you went from the written, as I say, all the way, the evolution of those frequencies to today. And how to observe the way that works. And what I'm saying is that because a lot of the reasons why people and things are not moving is because people are basically in a catatonic dream space right now, and like a sleepwalking space. That's basically what it is. Sleepwalking robot, and the electricity that keeps the biomechanical things we call humans running around are its need for more fuel. So money is the segue to get that fuel. So you have the fuel of the food, the water, the what we call human fuels of community, and that whole stuff. Like all this stuff is fuel. And then once the system realized the fuel of our realm through the conscious beings, then say, oh, we can just fuck with and write this fuck shit on the wall, and then, you know, put some old backwards ass interpretations of this reality, enough to just tune the frequency down so they can get so we can make a profit off of us tuning them up over time. So the only way they had to do that was to manipulate the information over a certain amount of time. And like I said, we could be dealing with entities that are a little bit different than the beingness that we stem from. Just the same way we're a little bit different than people think differently. Like other people that think different, like we won't do shit that other people will definitely do. Like on the whole, Europeans went around the world and colonized the whole world and did some really fucked up shit. Like on the whole, percentage wise, you cannot ignore the reality that something needs to be analyzed there. Any basic ass psychologist would be like, we need to look at white people from a deeper perspective overall, just because they believe this illusion of the symbol that is whiteness. From that point right there is a psychological ping or disease that needs to be addressed. So that goes into this, and then people say, no, we're all the same. We're all, no. It's the same thing goes for so-called black people in the Americas, who are the actually indigenous people who still think that they're slaves. So the same way that, not exactly the same way, because it's a little deeper, a lot deeper when you have an entire psychology of mind control that has been created over centuries to make you think, not only think you're a slave, but think you're less than an illusion. That's what so-called black people are when they think they're African-American slaves. You're less than the human illusion. So they are the standards of the human baseline. When they pulled that three-fish shit, eugenics, genocide, primitive and savage mentalities, the new world, the Western world, all of that was designed. This is just a new version of that. All this, what is this? LGBT, everything that they're pushing hardcore in the mainstream media is just like another follow the frequency thing. So it's very easy to follow the LGBT agenda straight back to the Greco-Roman era. And then you can see all of that being a big part of society. So this is another part of the storyline that I was talking about before, as far as like, it's the essence of society that needs to be addressed, the Eurocentric psychological parasite that needs to be ripped out of our own minds. Like that shit needs to be addressed. The awareness of that needs to be recognized and addressed, because as long as that exists, we're not going to be able to get to the core of the issues and be fully functional. As long as you have a monkey wrench in your system, you won't be able to maximize your potential and even be fully functional. You won't even be able to function right. How the fuck could you function with any kind of monkey wrench going on in your space? So this is that we're in this movie version of functionality we call the human experience. And then since we believe in that, we just accept whatever anybody else that feels like benevolent says that, you know, is, so, oh yeah, then this is where the new age comes in. They start telling you about aliens. So you take the original illusions that have been pawned off by still by the Eurocentric thought process. Look at the television right now. What's on television? Alien shows, ghost shows, crime shows, everything that gives them authority, either a scientific theoretical authority or a systematic authority. So you got the pawnbrokers. This is all everything is money. Even the Alaskan, you know, crab shows, or that's for money, because they wouldn't do that unless they was getting paid all that money, or at least some of them wouldn't. So everything on television is designed to keep the system afloat, period, like in every moment. And until we address the entire system, we're not going to be able to get to the roots of the problem. So this is what I'm saying. Like when people have this empty shit, like, oh, just dream. That's the same thing. Like, oh, just love, just love. What is love? Oh, love is, you know, love is everything. Love is the infinite everything that is consciousness, and it's the good and the bad. It's the light and the dark. It's the love of, you know, they get into romanticizing it and don't recognize the love of the love that responsibility is. Like the responsibility to analyze and deal with all of these cancers and diseases that are still existing on a mass conscious. People in the New Age community always talk about, yo, no, we're all one, we're all this. But it's cool when they can see that perspective and they just, you know, be like, oh yeah, well, we'll just leave it like that. It's all right. And that's perfectly okay for them. I mean, but don't complain when, you know, things on a larger scale don't move as quickly as your judgment says they are. Well, the thing, you're not existing, you're not playing in that time. You're not working in that world. You've chosen the micro world of, I'm the only thing that matters. This is what the New Age community is about. Me, the soul, the one, the I am, and that's what I'm saying, is that's only at best half of the story. It's half of the story, because that's the illusion, the I am. That's why I was like, once I started the I am and then seeing that and all that, so like, still I space AM period, like that's a lot of words. That's a lot of extra shit there. Like you can break that down to something that's way more simple as far as what you are. Like, what are you before the perception of, you know, being able to say I am? Like where, so, and point being is that the I am is just like the word love and the word dream. Obviously there's a meaning to the word love, but my point is there's more of a meaning to the word fear than the word love, because fear exists more in a space of realizing how its effectiveness, its defined effectiveness, the word itself. Because I think it was Russell Brand or somebody talking about like love being the opposite of fear or something. Like, I should get my notepad and see what it was. Saying something to the extent of love being the opposite of fear, and I was like, that is not true at all. Don't quote me on that, but as far as if it was Russell Brand or not, but there was something to, and you've heard conversations to that extent that talk about it. Oh yeah, we're in a world of fear right now, and as soon as it switches from fear to love, then everything will be okay. Like we're gonna be in this fucking love utopia as soon as we stop dealing with fear. Well, you can't. Well, first of all, before you even get to love, you have to first analyze and get to the depths and dig out, you know, what fear is, but since and where it came from and what things keep the fear afloat. You can't just say like, oh, look at the symbol. As soon as that symbol goes away, then everything will be okay. It's like, no, you have to go up there and analyze who the fuck put that symbol there. How did the symbol there get there? What does it mean from its origins, and how is it supposed to affect us? and then get into doing the same thing, the analysis and the building up of love. But you can't get into that building up of whatever that is until you break down and become aware of the depths of what that whole fear space is, keeping you away from expanding. Because basically how I see it is it's in like to go inward and then outward, to implode into an explode. So like fear closes you up, whereas love opens you up. But once you get into the romanticizing of it all, like horror films or like, you know, thrillers and all that stuff, that like plays on fear. And then you got drama and stuff like that that plays on drama and all this other stuff that plays on love. So when you have all of these different systems that are existing on a regular basis playing to your subconscious, then eventually your conscious reality will start to react to those subconscious programs without you even knowing it. And this is where we are right now, where you can't even talk about the system of institutionalized racism, white supremacy around the world without people being immediately protective of their survival mechanism. This is where it comes from. This is why you can't, this is white people's, when you really blend it down for people who still define themselves as white, this is white people's survival mechanism to defend the Western ideologies. They have in any kind of truth information that exposes their, this is a subconscious thing. This is why it doesn't, on the macro scale, it's a subconscious primal instinct to defend their empire. This is another part of that system that people are not really realizing, and you see it every single day. Technology, all the LGBTQ, whatever it is, all that stuff, that is, look at it right now. There's an Xbox with a flag on it. Like that shit. This is Halo Infinity. Discover hope. See that word hope? That's just like, that you already know the word hope and that word magic. With the Obama, okay, so that's another example of how to see what I'm talking about in reference to the power of words. Look at that word, how Obama used hope to get, you know, people riled up around an idea. But what actually happened? Absolutely nothing. You hoped your way into another illusion. Just like you love your way into another illusion, or you fear your way into another illusion. And on a mass scale, we've been loved, feared, hoped, and every other name in the dictionary into these illusory ideas. We've been humaned into this idea of in like humanity and inhumanity, whereas this system is the most inhumane system out there. The people who define the word humanity are the most inhumane thinkers and actors in the whole in this whole experience on purpose. Like what's the best way to control a whole mass of people? Well, to control the way they think. It doesn't matter what they do. Like if you can control what they think, that's the most effective way, because you don't have to really work too much. They work for themselves. And working for themselves, they're working for you, because you've effectively shut down their relationship with the entire experience by manipulating the entire experience to downgrade itself or de-evolve itself into this symbolic form of living. This is why everything has to be in the future. We're going to Mars, we're going to the moon, everything in the future, technology in the future, 2020, 24, 2020. And then when you actually get there, what happens? A few things that were talked about back then happen. So this is what I'm saying in reference to the like I said in the last video, the system itself needs to be ripped out, man. Fuck that. I'm not even going to that. You can see it right now. It really doesn't need to be anything. You gotta... This is gonna be what it is. And people are either gonna fall for it or not. And many people have fallen for it. Look at this frozen shit. I was just in a grocery store the other day and I saw this little, I think she was Indian, a little Indian girl, with her mother, real young, and she was just looking at and in front of me was this white couple, probably about early 20s, real young. But you know, they just came from the gym. They're like gym rats, something like that, people like that. So they look like Disney characters almost, like this Frozen character. That's how they look. But a man and a woman standing in line, and this little girl is just staring deep into the eyes of this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, like he's a fucking god, like Thor, like he's some kind of Disney prince superhero balled into one. And her mom wasn't seeing it, and I turned around and I'm watching this whole thing go down, and because the girlfriend is looking at the exchange going on between the little girl and this guy, and she doesn't understand it. And I'm like, I know exactly what it is, because I can see like that baby was only maybe 4 or 5 years old, like not even that, no, 4 or 5 years old. Listen, all right, 3, 2, 3, 4 at most, but leaning more towards 3. And just in this kind of trance-like space that happens when kids are staring into Disney movies, are staring at some kind of Disney character at Disneyland or Disney World or something like that. Like this is how people are seen. This is the so-called white privilege that people don't see. It's the subconscious white privilege that exists inside fucking babies until they're already like, until you grow all the way up into adulthood. That's how deep this stuff goes. They are programming these children. And so this is that's why I said that's another macro subconscious way of seeing something like the system of racism, white supremacy existing in the subconscious of every individual in some kind of way. And so much in the so-called white individual that gets privileged in this system, that they have to, like, inherently, like, it's a survival mechanism. They have to defend white privilege. They have to defend the system of racism, white supremacy, because it's a primal instinct. It's a survival mechanism. This is why the lies had to go so far. This is why you had to be told that you are less than human, because there is something different with us that is trying to be hidden with this whole we're all the same movement. LGBTQ, New Age, we're all aliens, and you know, we're human and all this other stuff. This is where all this stuff comes from. And just like so-called white people, the privilege of that space existing inside the individual, just look at that as a percentage. Even if it's a drip drop, like even with like solar chargers, when you the best way to to charge up batteries is to do like a drip charge, like just slowly, but just keep a steady charge going, because it'll last longer. Your energy, your cells will last longer if you just drop a little bit of solar charge to those batteries. You keep them going forever. That's the best way to do it. So this is why the subconscious is the best way to mind control the conscious of the masses. So this is why everything is on these this is why they promote people like Prince EA or whatever his name is, because they romanticize. He's the perfect romanticizer. I'm glad I went on this, but he's a perfect romanticizer of this stuff. He's like a manifestation of the New Age romanticist interpretation of reality, where it's just like, oh yeah, that all makes sense, but it's still boiling down to romanticizing the illusionary world. A lot of these people are still in that space of thinking that this world could be fixed. So as long the system catches people at a certain approach, and then, like Kanye West was saying on the David Letterman interview, they just amplify like how he was attacked. He said if somebody gets a sprained ankle, you don't put more weight on that ankle. It's gonna hurt the ankle more. But in Hollywood, he was saying that his brain sprained like a sprained ankle, and then people were putting weight on his brain. That was his. I don't want to say excuse, but that's his explanation of what went down in that whole system. Obviously, there's more to the story. Let's see. So anyway, there was somewhere I was going with that. You probably already know where I was going with that, but I forgot. I'll loop back to it. I'm glad I did mention that, the story, because there's another part of the mind control of the symbolic world that is a part of that privilege and that authoritative sort of approach. Like, we talk about what I want to talk about. If you watch that interview, you can see the manipulative, privileged kind of thing that David Letterman has over Kanye, and he does it in the beginning. These are all control. You can see how they very manipulative control measures against people by the niceties, by just their, oh yeah, this is how we speak. Where, what did you have for breakfast? What did you do this? We're the same. Everything's cool. You're a very normal person. This whole, just by him trying to normalize Kanye is a sense of dominance or authority or higher than, so this is how we are portrayed in society. So this is another thing to get more complex with it. The subject of the 13th Amendment was brought up by Kanye West, and David Letterman was completely uncomfortable with that, and was probably being informed by the producers to distract and go away from that. He immediately, as soon as he could, he distracted and moved on to something else. I think he brought up, anyway, point is, that was the most important issue of that whole interview. And David Letterman is not stupid. If you were to ask him what is the most important part of that interview, he has the opportunity to go into Romanticism, which they usually do. Oh yeah, I think it's him about sharing the whole family thing, and that we see a deeper person, all this stuff. They personalize it, but they will never go into the psychology, the intention behind the certain things that are out there. Like, why did you avoid this huge issue when you could have gone deep into this issue? See, he could have helped. So anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So that is another mechanism that is out there that keeps us, and this is the problem right now where a lot of things are moving, is because we have all these things that are accepted in society that keep movement from happening. Internal movement and external movement. And so all these blocks in society, internal blocks and external blocks in society, like the system of racism, white supremacy, and all this other stuff that's out there. And we can't even really talk about it. Like, you can't even say anything about it because everybody has all these, there's so many reasons why, but a big part of it is this machine that you're looking at right now. This machine is running constantly. Look, he's like, look at this good mythical morning guy. These guys, these man children, like the Jungian interpretation of the man child. So in that space, the Western Empire acts as the mother and the father, like I was saying before. And then it just removes the father from the situation, and then you just get all motherly. So the father is like the military, and then the mother are like the services. And then you have the idea of the system itself. Like, it's a unifying, so this is, I'm glad I remembered this. The American dream, the whole Western New World, itself, that's when the new world, when this is what I've been saying for a long time now, the new world order started when they started to call the world the new world. And that's when they were saying we discovered the new world. This is when they started to formalize their illusions on the world. The new world, the next space of that was World War I, World War II. Who the fuck is telling you they're doing shit on the world scale? That's another frequency you have to trace back. So the frequency of the new world came with bring all your people from around the world to the new world, and we will create this new world of thought. And we will be the human race country. This is the United States of America that sits on top of the blood and the bones of the indigenous Americans. That is when the New World Order kicked into gear, when they started saying, so it's in the very nature. It's in the fucking hot dogs. It's in the baseball. It's in the White House. It's in the politics. It's in your first black president. It's in your state lines. It's in your state legislature. It's in everything. It's in the essence of everything that is the new world. That is the parasite that exists inside the people. And then to keep the story in, or to keep the power in the system turns itself into a symbol and says, and calls itself the Illuminati and the cabal and the bad guys and the good guys and the reptilians and all this other stuff. It just dramatizes it and romanticizes it the same way Hollywood does with everything, so that you will believe into that story, but to also you will repeat that story to your future generations. So you will start to pass down the ways that you are treated by the system to your children. So when you are put down by all these different kinds of manipulative thought processes from this new world, then you will institutionalize your children into the new world, because your original big, like that Big Brother 1984 mother and father definitions was created all the way back when Christopher Columbus said, you're not even, you don't even have a relationship with the earth anymore. This is about technology. This is about colonial living. And then that's where that's where the system, thrives in the symbolism of itself. So people are still protecting the symbolism of itself, and this is what I'm saying. When the protection of those symbols and illusions goes into the subconscious, that's when you can start to see how long things are going to take, because in order for movement to actually happen, because in order for something to change in the conscious, it still takes a long time. But in order for something to change in the subconscious, it takes that much time times like 30,000. Like it takes, like in some cases, if you really want to get to the depths of it, but once you start, it sounds extreme, but once you really get into realizing the relationship and the languages of the subconscious, that's when you can start to, that 30,000, you work your subconscious muscles, so that 30, you start your speed limit, your velocity starts to reach the 300 or the 30,000 mile per hour subconscious whatever. You get to that world. So before you realize that there's a subconscious language and frequency that exists inside of you and observing the entire realm, before you're not moving in any kind of subconscious miles per hour. You're stagnant. And when you're stagnant in your subconscious, this is where you don't dream anymore. This is why people don't dream, because they're totally vested into the conscious reality, which is vested into an illusion. So they're, in a dream within a dream within a dream. And they're not even speaking half of their own language.